Welcome to The Explainer. Okay, today we are tackling a question that, let's be honest, trips up almost everyone. How do you build a powerful, successful brand that is also, genuinely, you?
I mean, this is the core challenge, right? For pretty much every modern professional. You want this success, of course you do, but you also want it to feel real, to feel like it's actually you. So the big question is, how do you bridge that gap? How do you do it without selling out or, just faking it till you make it?
And right here, this is the fundamental shift in how you need to think about it. Branding isn't about inventing some cool persona out of thin air. No, it's more like archaeology. It's about digging deep and rediscovering the raw materials that are already there, just waiting to be uncovered and polished.
And that's exactly why we're not starting with marketing tactics or social media hacks. Nope, we're starting with the inner work. Seriously, if you get this part right, everything else just kind of falls into place. It all breaks down into 3 key ideas.
All right, so let's talk about originality because people get this wrong all the time. They think it's about being new and shiny. But here's the secret that almost everyone misses. The word originality literally comes from the word origin. So it's not about chasing the latest trends you see online. It's about going inward, back to your origin, and excavating the story of where you actually began.
So where do you even start digging, right? Well, you can start by asking yourself these 3 really powerful questions. Think of them like your excavation tools. Your backstory, that gives you your context. Your biggest challenges, man, that's where your character is revealed. And the people who transformed you, they point directly to your core values. This is the absolute gold mine for your brand story.
We've all been told at some point that we're too much of something, right? Too loud, too quiet, too intense. But here's what's so fascinating. If you look at some of the world's most successful people, they didn't hide that too much part of themselves. They turned their supposed flaws into their brand. That thing they were too much of, that became their trademark.
So the big takeaway here is stop hiding those parts of you. You have to reframe them. That obsessiveness, that's actually your incredible attention to detail. That emotion, that's your deep empathy. That intensity, well, that's your passion. Look, these aren't bugs in your operating system. They are literally the killer features. They are your competitive advantage.
And all of this leads to the final, crucial piece of your foundation, avoiding what's called the authenticity gap. That weird space between the perfect online you and the real you. Even the master storytellers over at Pixar get this. We connect with characters because of their struggles, not just because they win in the end. Sharing your own low points, your vulnerabilities, that doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. It makes you relatable. And that is how you build real trust. Okay, so you've done the inner work. You've excavated your story. Now what? How do you actually project that authentic self into what is, let's face it, a ridiculously crowded world? Well, that brings us to part 2, strategy. Now, the very first strategic move you have to make is to get out of the better trap. This is where everyone gets stuck. They try to be just a little bit faster or a little bit cheaper. But that's a race to the bottom. It's a losing game. The real win isn't in being better. It's in being meaningfully different. That's how you go from being just another commodity to being a real identity. That's how you become memorable. It really is that simple. When you think about it, in a sea of sameness, different is the only thing that actually gets noticed. It's what people remember. It's what they talk about later. Different is better than better.
So how do you be different? Here's a really powerful tactic. Consciously play against type. Just look at what everyone else in your industry is doing. How do they dress? How do they talk? What jargon do they use? And then you literally make a ban list of all those things for yourself and do the opposite. It doesn't have to be some huge dramatic rebellion either. Even a small intentional choice to break the pattern can make you stand out immediately.
And your goal, ultimately, is to have a story that's so simple and so memorable that other people do your marketing for you. I mean, think about Colonel Sanders, right? His real-life story of starting KFC in his 70s, that created this deep, authentic connection that some made-up mascot never, ever could have. When you have a great, repeatable story, your audience basically becomes your marketing team. All right, so you've found your authentic core. You've got a strategy to stand out from the crowd. Now for the third and final piece, growth. How do you take that initial spark and build it into a roaring fire? Simple. You build your tribe. And in the 21st century, you have to think of your social media as your new resume. I mean, think about it. Anyone can fudge a resume, right? But it is so much harder to fake a real, engaged online community.
That social presence is powerful proof of your actual influence, and it's telling a story about you long before you ever walk into a room or hop on a call.
But listen, building that tribe is never, ever a straight line up. Every single journey hits what the author Seth Godin famously calls the dip. And you know what this feels like. It's that brutal, inevitable slog where you are just pouring in maximum effort and getting almost no results. It feels like you're actually going backward.
And here's the secret. That's the whole point. The dip is designed to be difficult. It's a natural filter that weeds people out. You know the saying, people don't fail, they just quit? Well, this is where they quit, almost always, right here in this trough of sorrow.
So this is the moment where you have to reframe the struggle. The difficulty, that is the point. Because if it were easy, everybody would do it, and then it would be worthless. Pushing through the dip is the very thing that creates scarcity. And that scarcity is what makes your achievement and your brand so incredibly valuable.
Because ultimately, you have to remember that people aren't just buying products or services. They're buying an identity. They're joining a tribe. Every single dollar a customer spends is like a vote for the kind of world they want to live in. They're picking a team, and they want their team to win. And they will absolutely pay a premium. They'll cross the street to support the brand that represents who they are.
And one of the most powerful ways to unify that tribe, give them a shared language. These catchphrases, they're so much more than just clever marketing slogans. They're really shortcuts. They're these little packets of meaning that encapsulate your core beliefs. They're memorable, they're repeatable, and they reinforce the tribe's identity every single time someone says them.
Okay, so let's zoom out. After all of this work, looking inward to find your true origin story, figuring out how to stand out by being different, and then building a tribe around that, what is the ultimate goal? What's the end game here?
And this, right here, is the ultimate goal. Don't be a fungible human. And fungible just means, easily replaceable, like a dollar bill. You want to be a non-fungible human. The whole point isn't just to build a brand that could be swapped out for a competitor's. No, the goal is to build an identity so unique, so authentic, and so valuable that you become quite literally irreplaceable, a true one of one. So the final question isn't really for your brand, it's for you. What makes you non-fungible?